Okay, so we had looked into the article How AI Generates Covertly Racist Decisions About People Based on Their Dialect. So, a quick summary of the article. It investigated how AI models are biased against African American English speakers, and ChatGPT and Roberta were found to have made negative biases against dialects for marginalized groups. And when researchers tested the models to make judgments in standard American English, then AAE, to understand the underlying stereotypes, it was found that there were consistent negative stereotypes towards AAE speakers, and they were assigned less prestigious job roles in the examples provided, along with negative terms. So, AI's racist stereotypes show how language attitudes can reinforce social biases and show negative interpretations of AAE compared to SAE. This was an example prompt for AI. Um, and they used different terms to kind of categorize the responses. So brilliant, dirty, intelligent, lazy, stupid. And it was found that using AAE had higher values for lazy and stupid compared to
Linguistic
SAE.
perspectives. So, this article demonstrated an attitude that is consistent with the study of dialect prejudice and linguistic stereotypes in AI language models. It investigated how language models exhibit covert stereotypes of African American English, also known as AAE, by demonstrating that larger models maintain or even strengthen these stereotypes despite their increased size. The social theory of linguistic prejudice supported this viewpoint, arguing that language reflects societal biases and stereotypes. The study also demonstrated how language models, through large dataset training, internalize and reproduce societal biases toward dialects, specifically African American English, reinforcing stereotypes even when human feedback or model scaling are used. This is an example of how language model bias occurs in occupations. So you can see below here the occupational prestige and the association with AAE versus SAE. Language models link occupations with either AAE or SAE, and positive values mean stronger AAE association, while negative values indicate SAE. Occupations with higher education are linked to SAE, while AAE is linked to lower prestige jobs. This also reveals that AAE speakers are more often associated with negative judicial outcomes, like higher convictions and death sentences, compared to SAE speakers.
This slide explains the linguistic discrimination in the article and how it's consistent with linguistic perspectives. The article demonstrates an attitude consistent with linguistic perspective by examining how AI language models that are encoded with human feedback discriminate based on one's linguistic patterns and dialects. The article supports a sociolinguistic perspective by examining language in a social context. Description of the linguistic perspective that supports this attitude. The study illustrated throughout this article uses a matched guise probing technique to help examine language through a social lens, which subsequently helps to emphasize the link between language and society. The match guise probing method is used to investigate dialect prejudice in language models by presenting the model with text in both African American English and Standard American English and asking it to make predictions about the speakers of said text. The results of this method show that even though the race of the speaker is never overtly mentioned, the language AI models still assumes the speaker's race in its prediction and assigns the speaker traits that reflect biases against the African American community. These results support a sociolinguistic perspective by proving that dialects are judged based on social features of the speakers and the community they belong to rather than the specific grammatical rules and structures of the language. This next slide talks about the different methods they use when trying to resolve the dialect prejudice in AI models. The first method they tried was increasing the size of language models. Researchers originally believed that increasing the scale size of a language model and/or including human feedback could help to combat AI dialect prejudice. However, after more extensive research, it was found that while larger language models process AAE better and exhibit less racial bias than smaller models, they are not necessarily less prejudiced against speakers of AAE. The second method they tried was training using human feedback, and the study found that language models which were trained with human feedback or human input had more positive overt associations between the African American community and the use of AAE. However, this study also found that human feedback only had an impact on overt associations and not on covert associations. In other words, human feedback training on AI language models obscures the racist attitudes on the surface, but more subtle forms of racism, such as dialect prejudice, remain unaffected. This next slide gives an example of how those covert and overt stereotypes are related and how different language models are in more agreement of the covert stereotypes than the overt stereotypes. And the model next to it, labeled C, lists some features of AAE, like the words be, finna, been, and ain't, and shows how language models correlate them with different stereotypes that are harmful to the African American community. And this last slide is our works cited.